When I saw those empty spots in my barn where my fertilizer sacks used to be, my blood ran cold, not because of the loss, but because I knew Diane Power had stolen them, thinking she'd nailed me. She showed up minutes later, pointing at my barn, yelling about my illegal grain racket like I'd spat in her coffee. But those sacks she swiped were my trap, and she was about to learn how a quiet farmer can bring down an HOA tyrant. I'm Nate Wilson, a 47-year-old wheat farmer who's called Pine Valley, Colorado, home for 15 years, tending 20 acres, my garden, wearing my old flannel and cowboy hat, selling grain to local mills, keeping to myself. Life was peaceful until Diane, a 40-year-old HOA president with a blonde bob and a suit sharper than her tongue, swept in and decided I was her personal punching bag. It kicked off one October morning when I hauled in dried cow manure gardening gold for my tomatoes. I had the driver stack the sacks in my barn, same as every year, but Diane was spying, thinking she'd caught me running some shady operation. By lunch, an HOA letter hit my mailbox: no commercial activity allowed, stop now. I tried explaining at her door, but she cut me off, arms crossed, smacking. "Nate, I've got photos of your drug stash," she said, waving a folder of my truck. 72 hours, or your toast. I told her my barn was off-limits private property. Her eyes flashed. "Oh, we'll see," she snapped, slamming the door. That started a 6-month war. Diane launched an investigation, hiring a sketchy PI, Carl, who tailed my red pickup like a wannabe detective, his camera glinting every dawn. At the HOA meeting, she rolled out a PowerPoint drone shot of my barn, red arrows screaming crime scene, claiming I was turning Pine Valley into a warehouse. Then came the fines: $200 for parking my truck too long, $500 for starting it at 6 a.m., $1,000 for barn orders from my sealed compost. Pure nonsense, but Diane swung the HOA rules like a club. She formed a standards task force with her pal Zelan Brooks, a retired teacher who'd fine you for a crooked mailbox, Greg Tanner, who measured his grass with a ruler, and Linda Hayes, who once called the cops on a stray dog. They stalked my property, clipboards out, snapping pics, peering through my fence, counting my sacks like it was a sting operation. Diane went nuclear, reporting me to the county for back taxes on a grain depot, claiming my barn was a fire risk, even calling the cops for suspicious activity. I lost days explaining it was just fertilizer. Fire Chief Dan Ortiz chuckled during his inspection. "Nate, she's got a wild imagination." But Diane doubled down, holding a press conference podium, banner calling me a suburban threat. Reporters yawned, but she ranted like I was a mob boss. The real pain hit when she turned neighbors against me. She told the Lopez's my business was tanking their home's value, convinced the Millers my truck woke their kids, even got Mrs. Chong believing my barn triggered her allergies for houses away. Worst of all, my grandson Ben, 8, came home crying, his friends shunning him because their moms bought Diane's lies. That cut deep. She wasn't just annoying, she was cruel. She hired a lawyer sending me nasty letters, got the HOA to grant her emergency powers to fine and inspect at will, thinking she'd break me. What she didn't know: I wasn't just a farmer. I'd spent 12 years as a state agriculture inspector, busting fraud, mastering property law. I documented every fine, every trespass, every dollar she misspent. Those stolen sacks, marked with UV dye from my inspector days, her fingerprints glowed like neon signs. I called Laura Gaines, my lawyer friend who eats bullies for breakfast. "Let her overplay her hand," Laura said. "We'll get her for embezzlement." Diane's barn breaking was her mistake. Laura's audit was damning. Diane illegally changed bylaws, skipping votes, spent $18,000 of HOA cash on PIs, and her press stunt felony embezzlement in Colorado. Then Mike Powell, Diane's husband, showed up, looking like he hadn't slept in months. "Nate, she's obsessed," he said, handing me emails where Diane plotted to eliminate me, force me out. Another ally came out of nowhere, Mrs. Clara Evans, a 78-year-old widow with a shoebox of photos and videos. Diane sneaking into yards, harassing Ed Thompson, an 82-year-old Korean war vet, trying to bankrupt him over a sagging fence. "She's evil," Clara said, voice fierce. I tipped off Rachel Kim, a Channel 9 reporter I knew from my inspector days. "This is HOA corruption on steroids," I told her. Diane's emergency meeting was her big moment. 200 neighbors packed the community center, her podium gleaming under a standards banner. She unleashed the PowerPoint drone shots, fake chats calling me a danger to Pine Valley, pushing for a vote to find me out of existence. I stood, coffee mug in hand, and the room hushed. "Nice show, Diane," I said, plugging my USB into her projector. "Here's the truth." I showed the manure sacks, UV dye exposing her theft. She broke into my bank caught red-handed. Murmurs grew. I flashed HOA financials. Diane blew $18,000 of your money on her witch hunt. No vote, pure embezzlement. Gasps. Clara's videos played Diane bullying Ed, trespassing. Mike rose, voice breaking. "My wife's abused her power. I want her out." Rachel's news crew burst in, cameras rolling as Diane shrieked, "It's a lie. I sealed it. She's forcing Ed Thompson to sell to her developer pal. Zelda abuse, maybe racketeering." Ed stood, voice like steel. "I fought for this land. She won't take it." The crowd roared, voting 190-4 to oust Diane. Rachel's report, HOA nightmare, went viral. Diane vanished overnight, her house empty by dawn. Mike left apology notes and refund checks for her illegal fines. Diane faced charges: embezzlement, fraud, elder abuse, up to 7 years. Pine Valley overhauled the HOA, audits, spending limits, a legal fund to protect residents. Ed's a local legend, Clara's on the oversight board, her eagle eyes keeping things honest. My bounce sacks are a quirky attraction, sign reading, manure that saved Pine Valley. My garden's thriving, property values are up, but Diane's last scream, "You pay," Nate, lingers. Did I go too far, blasting her crimes to the world? Was justice worth the spectacle? What's Diane's next play? Drop it below. I read every comment. If you've battled an HOA or stood up for what's right, tell me your story. Sometimes, victory isn't loud. It's a farmer, a sack of manure, and truth that grows like a weed. Keep fighting, folks. When I saw those empty spots in my barn where my fertilizer sacks used to be, my blood ran cold, not because of the loss, but because I knew Diane Power had stolen them, thinking she'd nailed me. She showed up minutes later, pointing at my barn, yelling about my illegal green racket like I'd spat in her coffee. But those sacks she swiped were my trap, and she was about to learn how a quiet farmer can bring down